How is everyone doing today? It is Josh with another reaction here. We got another fun video from Kurzgesagt that just dropped recently called South Korea is Over. So that's a little ominous. I'm going to assume it's gonna have something to do with declining birth rate, because I'm pretty sure South Korea is like the lowest birth rate country, or like pretty close to the lowest birth rate country in the entire world, up there with like Japan and I mean sort of US. I mean, generally there's a trend of the more developed a country is, the lower the birth rate is, because conditions aren't as needed to have children. You don't need children to, you know, work your fields and work your farms and, you know, support your lifestyle. They are able to have more of their own whatever. You don't have to live with your parents as much anymore. Like, okay, well, not with the finances they're currently having. People have to live with their parents, but not exactly the same thing. But regardless, I know that birth rates are going down in places like that because of how the world is changing. So I would assume that it has something to do with that topic. So we'll see. Maybe they have solutions. Maybe they don't. Maybe this is just going to be a whole doom post. Who knows? And don't forget, after this video, to like, comment, subscribe if you do enjoy this. And consider subscribing to my Patreon if you want to see more content like this in the future. And with all that said, let's get on into it.
South Korea is over. This sounds brutal, but South Korea will soon start melting on all fronts.
There they go.
Demographically, economically, socially, culturally, and militarily. Because for decades, the country has been experiencing a fertility crisis unprecedented in human history.
Yes, exactly what I was saying.
We've probably reached a point of no return. By 2060, the South Korea we know and love today will no longer exist. What will the collapse look like? And why is it now almost impossible to stop? The real population bomb. To have a stable population, you need a fertility rate of about 2.1 children per woman. In the 1950s, South Koreans used to have 6 children on average. In the 1980s, the rate fell below 2. And in 2023, it was 0.72 kids
that is
per
so
woman,
low.
the lowest ever recorded in history. In
Yeah,
Seoul,
US 1.6,
is
yeah.
even lower, around 0.55. On average, about half of the women here won't have any kids, and the other half just one. What do these numbers actually mean in the real world?
Yeah.
If fertility stays as it is, then 100 South Koreans will have 36 kids. When they grow up, they will have 13 kids, who will then have 5. Within 4 generations, 100 South Koreans will turn into 5. If we look at today's South Korean population
that's how it
pyramid,
is.
we see this is pretty real. There's only one.
That's why countries need to not be as afraid of immigration to start out, because like that's where you're going to get your population. You have to let other people in. If you're going to be just isolationist, you're fucked.
An all-time high, as are its workforce and its GDP, which is still growing. But demographics hits you like a freight train. You hear it vaguely in the distance, and then it runs you over. South Korea is about to be hit. Let's time travel 35 years into the future,
we can do that?
2060, and see what the country will look like then. When it comes to demographics, the most commonly used projections are those put together by the UN. They envisage 3 scenarios: low fertility, medium, and high. But in the past, all medium UN projections for South Korea have consistently been too positive. Between 2022 and 2023 alone, fertility in South Korea dropped by another 8%. So we're going to use the latest low fertility scenario, which has been the most accurate in the last few years.
Yeah, makes sense.
Keep in mind that we're still talking about projections, and the future is a faraway land. Okay, let's do it. In 2060, South Korea's population pyramid will look like this. The population will have shrunk by 30%. 16 million South Koreans will have disappeared in just 35 years. And it'll be the oldest country in human history. 1 in 2 South Koreans will be over the age of 65.
That's
Less than
crazy.
1 in 10 will be under 25. And only 1 in 100 will be small children. Imagine
That's
waking
so
up in a
crazy.
country where the streets are strangely quiet with no children playing on them.
Yeah.
Entire cities have been abandoned. Half of the population is elderly and living either alone or in overcrowded retirement homes, with a minority of people desperately trying to keep society running.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how are you gonna even do
There will
that?
be a few major consequences. Economic collapse. In 2023, a breathtaking 40% of South Koreans over 65 lived below the poverty line. But in 2060, this number may seem lovely in comparison. Today, South Korea has one of the largest pension funds in the world, worth about $730 billion US. But it's projected to stop growing in the 2040s and be completely depleted by the 2050s. So in 2060, pensions will have to be paid by the working population.
Yeah.
Estimates vary, but for a pension system to work, the minimum a society needs is between 2 to 3 workers per retiree paying for them with their taxes. But even if we assume
not
all
happening.
South Koreans over 15 will be working in 2060, the country will have less than 1 worker per senior.
Yeah,
Workers will be
no way.
unable to stem the incredible costs. So not only will poverty among the elderly be common, but a big chunk will be forced to work. Except they may not be able to find jobs because by 2060, the South Korean economy may have collapsed. Broadly speaking, the size of an economy is linked to the size of its workforce.
Sure.
To have a big economy, you need a lot of workers to produce a lot of things and a lot more people to buy them.
Makes sense.
Today, South Korea has about 37 million people of working age, generating a GDP of about 1.7 trillion US dollars. But by 2060, its workforce would have shrunk to less than half, to about 17 million. Of course, technological progress means that productivity will be higher and each individual will probably produce more than today.
Sure.
But even if productivity keeps growing at the same rate or more than we've seen in the last decades, South Korea's GDP could peak in the 2040s. In other words, South Korea will enter a permanent economic recession. There are more optimistic projections that see the recession begin as late as 2050, but they're based on the medium UN demographic scenario, and there are no signs that we're heading there. Another factor in the economy is science, technology, and innovation, areas in which big leaps are typically made by young adults and the middle-aged. Young people have fresh ideas that contribute to the wealth of society. Significantly fewer people working also means way less tax for the government, which will be trapped between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, having to provide for half the population that are seniors, on the other, seeing its income diminish. It will be forced to shut down or cut essential services like hospitals or social benefits. Since infrastructure only works at scale, smaller communities may be abandoned as the country contracts into its metropolitan areas. And of course, there won't be enough money to invest in the future. This is bad. But what will happen to South Korean society and culture may be worse. Societal and cultural collapse.
Holy shit.
Speculating on how societies will develop is extra hard, but there are a few pretty unavoidable trends. Today, already about 20% of Koreans live alone. Also, 20% report having no close friends or relatives. By 2060, 50% of South Koreans aged 70 will have no siblings, and 30% will have no children. Young adults between 25 and 35 will only make up 5% of the population and typically have no siblings at all.
Crazy.
This leaves the elderly with almost no close family and young adults with little family and few potential friends, especially outside of big cities. A loneliness epidemic of epic proportions is all but guaranteed. On top of that, South Korean culture will probably experience a huge decline. In 2000, there were 17.5 million South Koreans between 25 and 45, and they made up 37% of the population.
Okay.
This was the generation that brought us K-pop, K-drama, K-food, and many other trends that spread around the world. In 2060, there will be just 5.6 million people in that age group, and they'll only be 16% of the population. Many cultural traditions are already struggling because the older generations are having trouble finding young people to pass them on to. As young people disappear, many traditions will die out. Without young people, the soul of South Korean culture will shrink and wither away. And on a personal level, what kind of experience will it be growing up in 2060? What
Damn,
will
I
these
just got
schools be
hit.
like
Dude,
in
that's
a country of
sad.
Seniors, where many universities, schools,
Sorry,
and
I got like in a
kindergartens are
trance there for a
abandoned
little
as
bit.
there are no
That's
longer children to
this
fill
is
them with
really
life.
fucking depressing video.
What kind of job prospects
But it makes
will they
sense.
face, and what will politics look like?
And we've known for a long
If
time
young
that
people don't
the
want to
population's
remain
going
alone,
down in these
they'll
places.
concentrate in Seoul or a few other big cities, or worse for South Korea, emigrate to other countries.
Yeah, that's what you don't
Rural
want.
areas will decline, and most smaller cities will turn into ghost towns. We're already seeing this in Japan,
Yeah,
which has almost
exactly. I was gonna
10
say this is a very,
million abandoned
very
houses in
Japan
rural
thing.
areas. Large parts of South Korea will simply vanish and be reclaimed by nature. Last but not least, South and North Korea are technically at war. and they could very well still be in 2060. Will South Korea still be able to afford to have its young men do 18 months of mandatory military service? Today, 5%
Probably not.
of men of combat age are enrolled in the military. In 2060, it would have to be 15% just to match today's numbers. Okay, wait, this is all a bit much. Is there no way back? Why, there really is no way back. The problem with the demographic freight train is that once it hits, things become irreversible. Let's say fertility in South Korea magically triples to the replacement rate of 2.1 children per woman and stays there. In 2060, it will be an inverted pyramid on top of a barrel. And there would still be only 1.5 people of working age per senior over 65. Even in the best made-up scenario, South Korea has to pass through an unavoidable bottleneck before it will recover. But there is also a kernel of hope here. Yes, the situation is grim, but at least in the long term, recovery is possible if South Korea enacts rapid and societal changes that make its population want to have kids again.
Yeah.
In 2024, births rose for the first time in 9 years,
Ooh.
3% more than in 2023.
Hey,
But
that's
for them
something
to
at least.
continue, South Korea needs to face the music and ask how they got to this point. How could it get that bad? In general, as societies get richer, more educated, and child mortality plummets, people decide to have fewer kids. What makes South Korea special is that it's somehow supercharging all of these trends. South Korea lifted itself out of poverty in record time, but in doing so it developed a unique kind of workaholism and extreme competitiveness. Although the work week is 40 hours and the legal maximum is 52 per week, unpaid overtime is normal for many, and the government even proposed to raise legal work time to 69 hours.
Holy shit, nice.
Despite
But that's
this, South
crazy.
Korea has relatively low wages and a high cost of living. Real estate in big
Wow,
cities
great.
is out of reach for most people. The cost of education is extremely high, since families have to pay for private lessons if they want to send their kids to a high-tier college. All of this while South Korea spends less on family benefits than most other rich countries. Old-fashioned cultural norms make matters even worse. Marriage is all but mandatory if a couple wants to start a family. In 2023, only 4.7% of babies were born to unmarried women.
That's
Out of all
pretty
developed
fucking low.
countries, South Korean men do just about the least share of housework and childcare within their families. This leaves women with a disproportionate amount of work if they want to keep their
That is
jobs
very
after a
old-fashioned.
pregnancy, while many men are overwhelmed by the societal expectation to be the main breadwinner and have successful careers. Starting a family or not is a personal decision, and most South Koreans are deciding against it. The bottom line is that South Korea has created a culture that leads to very few kids. Conclusion. Demographic collapse is not an abstract thing in the future, it's happening right now. And it's not just South Korea. In
Yeah.
2023, China had a fertility rate of 1, Italy and Spain 1.2, Germany 1.4, the UK 1.6, and the US 1.6. Which sounds so much better, doesn't it? Well, after 4 generations, a fertility rate of 1.6 means 60% fewer new people. A fertility rate of 1.2 means 87% fewer people. And fertility rates are still falling with no sign of stabilization or recovery. The weirdest thing about all of this is that almost nobody involved in the public discourse has truly grasped the gravity of the situation. The last century was utterly dominated by overpopulation narratives, and people who say that we need more kids
exactly.
seem weird. And if you do the
Exactly.
maths,
There was so much when I was growing up that was being thrown around. There was like,
it's hard to
the world's gonna
believe.
have too many people,
None of
we
this
won't be able
has
to
ever
sustain it, won't be able to sustain it. Less kids,
So,
less kids,
low
less
birth
kids.
rates are
But the
mostly
problem is
discussed
that the
in
countries that
context
were
of
having
worker
all these
shortages,
kids,
not as the
most of
existential
them,
threat
for the
to
most
our
part,
societies,
were not the
cultures,
ones
wealth,
that
and
needed
our
to hear
way
that
of
message.
life
It was
that
these
they
other
are.
countries that
If we don't take it seriously
aren't
very
nearly as
soon and
advanced or
change
whatever,
the
that
DNA
really
of
need to be the
modern
ones that cut
societies
down
in
on
a way
the
that encourages
having
young
tons
people
more
to start
kids.
having children
But it
again,
was less so
then the
that, it's just they
rest
just
of the
need to
century
develop
will be
more
pretty grim
and be
for
more,
those of us who will live through it.
you know,
The demographic freight train stops for
more
nobody.
developed, I guess, yeah,
We finally
more
need to
advanced in
realize
society,
that it's
so that
hurtling
way
down the
they can
tracks right at us.
come to a similar spot where everybody is also, you know, having more kids. Or not no more kids, sorry. We hit a point where everybody is also, you know, around the same spot in technology. And then like, you know, potential solutions could be like, besides just having more kids, could be if you actually can get people to live for longer and have a more healthy lifestyle for longer. Like, let's say you can get people to live to like reliably live to 100 years old, because nowadays it's still like what, maybe 80 years old is where you can have. If you had people that could live to 100 years old, then you can also make it so that people can actually work for longer. That's the hard part is that second part. People don't want to work that long. Everyone is like, oh, 65, that's retirement age. I'm done at 65. It's like, yeah, but that was back in the day when people would live until like 75, 78 years old, something like that, somewhere in that range. But it's like, if people are living to 100, your ass cannot be retiring at 65. You're going to need to work until like 80, probably, which is fine. Like, I mean, as a person, you're like, fuck, I don't want to work that long. But in actuality, it's like, well, society needs you to do it. So do it. And we can't afford you to be in retirement for that long anyway. And neither can you. So that's just how it is. But unfortunately, that's not a complete solution, right? That's a helpful stopgap. The real solution is you need to get people to want to have kids again. Because I mean, like, even over here in America, like, I personally, I'm leaning towards the not wanting to have kids either side of it, the argument. So I can see where they're coming from. It's not nearly as much of a norm where it's like, okay, you get out of high school, maybe you're in college or something like that, you get a wife, you have 2 or 3 kids, and then you settle down for the rest of your life. It's like, that's not the narrative that is pushed on everybody these days. It's a lot more, do what you want. My parents were too strict on me, so I'm going to let you be a lot more free and able to do what you want. But a lot of that freedom turns into, well, shit, maybe I don't want a kid. All I hear about these people having kids is that they're miserable or they're busy all the time and they can't do anything. Even if they love their kid, they are very, up in their own business and they can't do anything else. So maybe I don't want a kid. And then that, that perpetuates more and more generations. Like I said a bit ago, that was being told to everybody, and that there's too much population everywhere. So that also goes through people's heads. And yeah, it all just collapses into where we are now with South Korea and US and, all these other more prosperous first world countries. Same issue. Everyone's got that. So who knows how that's just going to get solved. The problem is, we have all sorts of other political stuff that's happening these days. So it's not on the forefront for anyone's heads to really focus on trying to get fixed, which is unfortunate. So who knows what's going to happen? It's a scary thought. And the sucky part is that forever, it's just going to be one of those issues where it's like, well, by the time it's 2060, I'll be like 70 or something. So like, if there's less people, I'm not going to be alive to worry about it. People are too selfish with their thinking. They're like, oh, I only care about myself. I'm not going to be alive at that point. So that's future people's problem to worry about. It's like, yeah, but you will still probably be around that time. And if you're not, maybe your kids, oh, sorry, you're not having kids, so maybe you don't care. But if humanity wants to move on and actually be prosperous and be able to move along in the future, they have to think forward. They have to think ahead. They have to think of more than just themselves. And that seems like something that's gotten less and less important over the last, 10, 15, 20 years. So something's got to happen to flip that mindset around. Who knows? Well, sorry to get all deep there at the end. That's probably the most I've yapped after a video ever. But I don't know. It's a lot to think about, and it's exciting and terrifying. So, whatever. Well, I wonder what your thoughts are. If you have anything you want to say about this or exciting stuff, put a comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.